Ahsoka is basically Star Wars Rebels, but live action. And I have no complaints about that. Everything that people loved about the Rebels animated show is brought to live action. The plot continues the story of Ahsoka and Sabine. The crew of the Ghost is back. Thrawn is finally here. And something I never thought we would see in live action Star Wars is space whales. All of these ideas and stories come from the brain of Dave Filoni. He's the one that created Star Wars Rebels. He created Star Wars The Clone Wars. So this live action show really is a culmination of Dave Filoni's work over the past 20 years. It's such a great idea putting all of these pieces back into Dave Filoni's hands because he really understands Star Wars and knows how to make it enjoyable. The overall design in Ahsoka is fantastic. The costumes are incredible. The set pieces are insanely detailed, and the visual effects bring it all together. So the design across the board is seamless, and it's such a fun experience watching. I think the best design choice of this show is finally bringing lightsabers back into Star Wars. It's something that's been missing for years, and it's so great to see lightsabers everywhere in this show. Ahsoka really is a great looking show. It has a very clinical and clean looking cinematography. This show really has a lot of core Star Wars DNA in it. We have lots of great looking set pieces and interesting looking characters, but for me, the struggle really comes in the story and the development of the characters. There's only 8 episodes in this first season, and the pacing in the majority of the episodes is very slow. When we're introduced to Ahsoka in the very first episode, it takes about 10 minutes of coverage of showing every angle of her walking into this room, grabbing a map. So decisions like that really add a slow burn effect to this show. The plot also seems to have more questions than answers. We are introduced to some new characters like Baylan and Shin. We also revisit the Night Sisters, but in a new way. Although we have these new characters and new pieces to play with, there's not a ton of depth or development into these new things. And in 8 episodes, it's really hard to fit in caring about Ahsoka while also caring about who they're fighting. Rosario Dawson is a great actress, but she does play Ahsoka kind of cold. There's not much expression, there's not much emotion. Sabine, Hera, these other familiar characters, there's not a ton of range in the performance from the actresses. So the characters feel a little dry in this show. My favorite episode from this first season is absolutely Shadow Warrior. It's so great seeing Hayden Christensen back in his role as Anakin Skywalker. We also get a ton of Clone Wars nostalgia, which for me is just fantastic because I grew up on the prequels and the Clone Wars was just awesome. I was not too satisfied with the season finale. They open a lot of doors to future shows to connect back to, which really just feels like they're copying from the Marvel playbook at this point. It's pretty obvious that Disney is approaching Star Wars the same way that they're approaching Marvel, by trying to connect dots and leave things open. There's no real satisfying ending or conclusion to this first season because they are setting themselves up for the future. They're definitely building up the connection in the Mando-verse, which is basically The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and now Ahsoka. All of these shows are going to be connected together in the future. They've already announced that Thrawn is going to be the big bad of this little Mando-verse series. It kind of is starting to feel like Avengers but Star Wars, which is not a very original idea, but Disney knows that Avengers pulled in a ton of money, so they're trying to recreate some of that spark in Star Wars. Ahsoka has a lot of things working in its favor, but there's some things that are just holding it back from being a truly great show. I do think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau really are the best decision makers for Star Wars in the future, so I really hope that Disney holds on to them, cherishes them, and loves them just as much as the fans do. Let me know what you think on Ahsoka and the future of Star Wars, and I'll see y'all later.